So they used that method, and like they got a good passing grade, because that was the big problem to solve in the whole puzzle of hydrogen vehicles, which, you know, were years away from even being a thing. So, you know, and she wanted to go off and sleep with other people and all that. And I had been exposed to that. Like, I didn't know the hippies were, I mean, they were, some of them were honest, like polyamory doesn't work. Like, don't.
More than that, their brain development was sabotaged by their traumatic experiences. The systems subverted by addiction, the dopamine and opioid circuits, the limbic or emotional brain, the stress apparatus and the impulse control areas of the cortex just cannot develop normally in such circumstances. But it is not just childhood trauma which makes one more susceptible to addiction. Children who grew up with emotionally cold or distant caregivers are also much more likely to turn to addictions in adulthood. The psychologist Alan Shore called this situation of parental emotional absence proximal separation. The parent is proximate. He or she is physically present and satiates all the child's physical needs. Yet due to stress, depression, or other internal demons, the parent does not nurture the child psychologically or emotionally, and does
home. What was that like? Or do you still identify as a Christian? Do you go to church? I mean, some of these kind of pastoral things that I'm always curious about.
Sure. The last 2,000 years, you know, minus the most recent 150. It's true. It could be 7 days, maybe not. But let's just say God created the earth in 7 days. He created Adam and Eve in the garden. He created a tree of life. He created a tree of knowledge of good and evil. He created the serpent. He created the scenario where they, you know, in which they sinned.
The more the vibration of the consciousness, the flow undisturbed of consciousness, and the love and the unconditional love and the peace that's found within there, and the vitality, the vibrance, the vitality that's found within there, the more you use thought, the further down the vibrational scale you are, is my experience.
Scientific revolution is coming, and we're finding, you know, amazing new power of manipulating and controlling the physical world. And, you know, the reason I call this the lab leak, the scientific lab leak, is we take the scientific method and we say, oh, in these little domains it works very well, but then we do what we always do, we overreach, and now suddenly
in the European Union, or questions about surrealism, or questions about, you know, and I'm always following these, and these aren't just abstract questions just because I think I'm somebody. They're questions because the answer to these questions will provide answers that I need to know. So, to me, a good question, an honest question, is based on certainty. And the certainty is there is some kind of answer. Not a complete answer. There is never a complete answer to anything. That is to say, even if there is a complete answer, we don't have access to it. And this is true in science. This is true.
Trying to provide space for other people to do this work so that this work of making sense of reality, let's say, continues beyond you. How do you impart to them the correct method, or let's just say how to be balanced in organizing? There's a lot of organization. This is basic organization. And human beings, our minds, our feelings, and our imaginations get really unwieldy, really quick.
Well, one of the things that first of all can help is that if you bounce your ideas off other people, that is definitely, like, people who think about symbolism and are just kind of alone in their own little world and just mull it over, they tend to go crazy after a while. It's not good.
He's mine.
Let it all hang out, and some people stay and some people go, but I think that's the best we're ever going to get, is disagreeing, but disagreeing in a disagreeing together.
Well, and we've always had disagreements in the church. I mean, you can't read any church history all the way up to and including the book of Acts and the letters of Paul. There's always disagreement. And that doesn't mean that we give up the search for truth, but we understand that disagreement is part of the process of the search for truth. Every time Paul of Tarsus went into a synagogue in the Eastern Roman Empire and said things like, Jesus is risen and he's the promised Messiah of Israel, there was disagreement.
Ideas. And another thing that you were saying, you know, in terms of his engaging us in this subjective self, that is sort of like, he uses the N word in a really interesting way to refer to people. And that N word is the everyman.
Yes, that's why he uses it for everyone. He calls it, he calls everybody by that word.
Yes.
Whomever they are, however old, young.
Yeah.
You know, God is the one who sees all things and understands all things. And so I think that we drastically downplay in our imaginations how wicked and how evil those times and those places must have been. Now, when you read the story in Judges,
the founder of this, I will refuse anybody who claims that or attributes that to me. This is going on. This is going on and will go on without me. It is already happening, and I am just trying to help. I'm trying to articulate, reflect, guide, get people linked together, provoke thought, provoke discussion. I'm going to say that.
Oh, happy day. Every morning the cereal would ripen in the sun, becoming toasty and sugary and golden with vitamins. What are you, scavenger or something? And they knew they had found a home. Oh! I wonder what the taxes are like here. Freakies.
I feel very fortunate because I came of age just before fast internet and all of this stuff had started taking off, like right before YouTube, all of this stuff. And I can imagine that if I was I don't know, if I was 13 and all of this stuff had existed today, like I'm sure it would be warping my brain in one way or another. I mean, between the internet, between social media, and then of course the digital porn and the endless images, I don't know how like very young boys are dealing with this.
And in addition to that, when they actually act on those feelings, different parts of their brain turn on and off in different sequences. And once you understand how to perceive the pattern within a person's speech, you actually know what sequence of brain areas you need to stimulate in the precise order and way you need to do it, so they'll naturally take the behavior and do the action you want. It's actually one of the
and vibration. Then this is putting us smack dab in the middle of a spiritual war. And if we don't realize it's vibrational, it puts us in a deeply vulnerable state. And so when you get into the higher frequencies, when you get into the higher frequency with inside your column of white light, hello Sandy, this very high frequency dog just arrived with me, then you have dominion over the lower frequency energies and vibrations. When I was in Germany recently, I was with Fritzi, and I insist.
And I'm a capitalist.
And that's honest. I like that about Grizz. I really do. But when are you going to start your paintball team, Grizz?
Yeah, do you have one?
There's a sign right across tracks of the guy who has maybe a paintball course or did one once in town with a big phone number on it. I haven't called yet.
Okay.
But
sort of filtered through into house visitation, because in some ways, practice of house visitation was sort of like, we're going to have the family confessional now. The elders are here to check on, to check up on you. And then also, the preparatory service. And it in the Christian Reformed Church, then even into some respects, the holiest among us never dared take communion because we were the ones